Women's equity actually was basically who were professionals. They weren't working class women, and they wanted to look at women's issues from a legislative and legal point of view, and and they were looking specifically at economic equity issues. I was sort of the lawyer for the organization. One of the problems I had working for WHEEL was that I really saw that there were no women of color at these meetings, at least also not in leadership positions. I remember giving a talk at a women's conference about why women of color organizations had a hard time supporting the women's causes, the women's agenda, which was basically being forwarded and developed by white women, and began to look at empowerment for women of color. How could I bring their voices right into the center of what was going on? What I realized is that these women, they didn't have anything, they weren't racist in the traditional sense, they just didn't think about it. And then when they did, they didn't know what to do with us, really, in order to sort of bridge that gap. And that was something that also really intrigued me. I was able to sort of leverage my position, not only going to meetings where I was working on legislation, but able to bring that perspective kind of into it and sort of advocate for women of color's participation. That's all I was asking for. Just bring them in the room where these things are getting made and ask them how they feel about the legislation. What did they want from this legislation? One of the key aspects that the women's business ownership focused on was statistics. There was a really big emphasis on getting that statistical information together, which is where I saw how important statistics are. And the thing that I noticed is that, well, where are the statistics for women of color? How do we know how many of, how much they're contributing to business and to the economy? And what do they need? And I was getting a lot of pushback from the larger organizations. That was the first year that the Black Women's Agenda had a paid staff position. We put our legal knowledge together to figure out strategies and ways to work with the legislation as it was being proposed and to modify it in ways that would help women of color. And the area that we chose to focus on was statistics. So basically all we wanted to do was be counted. And what happened afterwards was really interesting, because as these reports went on, there was more and more interest on what was happening to Hispanic, Black, Asian, the different types of racial and ethnic groupings. Whereas when we started, they didn't have the language. They felt that they couldn't support it because it would endanger whatever goals that they had. And as time went on, I think it was like, wow. When I looked at the 2025 report, it was like, oh my God, finally the concept of race and sex coming together had been made. There were like Asian women's business as a prize, Black women, Hispanic women. The diversity in the information was really impressive. I mean, I didn't even know that the Women's Business Ownership Act was such a landmark piece of legislation. I just thought it was a little piece of legislation that I was working on. It's nice to be recognized, and that it makes me feel like the work I did was meaningful.